O thou, the Lord of the visible and the invisible, and the enlightener of all creation, I beseech thee by thy sovereignty, which is hid from the eyes of men, to reveal in all directions the signs of thy manifold blessings, and the tokens of thy loving kindness, that I may arise with exultation and rapture, and extol thy wondrous virtues. O thou, the most merciful, and stir up thy name, all created things, and so kindle the fire of thy glorification amidst thy creatures, that all the world may be filled with the brightness of the light of thy glory, and all existence be inflamed with the fire of thy cause. Roll not up, O my Lord, what hath been spread out in thy name, and extinguish not the lamp which thine own fire hath lit. Withhold not, O my Lord, the water that is life indeed from running down, the water from whose murmuring the wondrous melodies which extol and glorify thee can be heard. Deny not, moreover, thy servants the sweet fragrance of the breath which hath been wafted through thy love. Thou seest, O thou who art my all-glorious beloved, the restless waves that surge within the ocean of my heart, in my love and yearning towards thee. I implore thee, by the signs of thy majesty and the evidences of thy sovereignty, to subdue thy servants by this name which thou hast made to be the King of all names in the kingdom of thy creation. Potent art thou to rule as thou pleasest. No God is there but thee, the all-glorious, the all-bountiful. Do thou ordain, moreover, for every one who hath turned towards thee what will make him steadfast in thy cause, in such wise that neither the vain imaginations of the infidels among thy creatures, nor the idle talk of the froward amidst thy servants, will have the power to shut him out from thee. Thou verily art the help in peril, the Almighty, the most powerful, the Holy.
Yeah.
Hello again. Where were we?
My light is in thee.
Where are we? Thy light is in thee. Yeah, that's great. Standing within thee, mighty, powerful, self-subsisting. How do we not let that seem like a goal out of sight that, oh, I could never do that, or I can't think like that? That's like telling the manifestation that you said everything you revealed is applicable to us, but this one doesn't. How am I going to see with your eye and hear with your ear? You know, friends, in a mysterious way, I understand that we're already doing that. All power, all confirmation flows from Him. It's an influx into our being. Our being is sustained by the only life there is, which is the life of God, and it's projected into creation and sustains creation. It's an interesting idea that Baha'u'llah God is not just the maker, He's the sustainer. He's a constant. And the only reason we don't feel as close to Him before, as Mr. Sears said, who moved? If we don't feel as close as before, I mean, okay. I think God's not coming and going anywhere. How do we create this habit of oft returning to His presence? I think all of us have perhaps had moments when the prayer becomes fragrant or it overwhelms us. At least I hope we're all having that experience. Christian saints have something they call the dark night of the soul. And the soul, one of the suffering of the soul is this parchness of not feeling these divine fragrances and things, and of having therefore to examine more carefully the roots of the veils that keep us from approaching the presence of God in our hearts. And he says the veils are twofold. There's the veil of self, which is the veil of ego and of vainglory. And with the help of the manifestations, the whisperings of the insinuations of the evil one, plays all kinds of havoc with us. We are alternately humble and yet desirous of more praise and adulation and so on. You know yourselves the subtle things within family and every other place. Who's in control? So that's the first veil, and it's very subtle, and we seem to be standing in an area with the illusion of free will, where we think we can choose. And we do have this possibility of where do we incline ourselves to? But this inclination is at the crossroads of two influences. One is this evil whisperer, that's the low qualities of the soul. It's always there, whispering to us, telling us, don't worry about this. Everybody does that. And look at the people around you. How's God going to punish you? He'll have to punish everybody. And I mean, that's a grosser one. They're very, you can come up with some very subtle ones. The second one, he says passions, human passion, which is the result, of course, of the animal bidding in our nature, which leads to procreation and keeps the human race going. But it has to be channeled within the laws of God to be appropriate. Otherwise, it serves as a veil. I haven't seen anything except these two, although the range of the passions and the subtleties of the voice that is also dictating that to us, giving us reasons why love is the most important thing. And doesn't your faith tell you to love everyone? Yeah. So the other side of the equation is that angels are assigned to us, and Islam has got things about that to say. We have guardian angels, and they're on our shoulder, but they are constantly bringing to our attention what we have studied of the Word of God. That's why it's so important that we're constantly interacting and seeking out the meanings of the divine text, because that acts as a protection for us, and it's a kind of a reserve where it comes back to us. And this is a very gentle, the one from the left side, so to speak, the insinuations of the evil one are like a gale, he says. But then this other is very subtle and is constantly available. And when we recite the verses of God, you remember it's in the Gleanings it's quoted, and then it's also quoted at the beginning of the prayer book about the scattering angels of the Almighty disperse the influence that your prayer has. Something about human beings reciting the verses of God, focusing on the words of God, releases power that angels can use to lift and inspire the hearts of other people. And there are these very kind of difficult to even imagine promises that says the soul that becomes detached, from his breath and from his actions, everything in the creation is benefited. What? But that's because that's the self of God that acts in the individual when he dies to himself and lives to his Creator, which is, again, hidden words right at the early stages. So we go through the day and things come at us. And do we react according to the whisperings, satanic whisperings, or do we listen to the voice of the angels? All kinds of prayers we have which says, let me, hold me, protect me under the influence of your verses. This is why the absorption of the culture of prayers and meditations by Baha'u'llah is, I think, something that we should all hold very dear to us. I want to remember something to repeat to you, and I can't find it. You know, after a while, you get like a fossil.
I'm already there.
Yeah. When the hidden word, when the prayers and meditations was sent to the American Baha'i community, the Guardian has expressed, and you can find this in the letters from the 30s. Citadel of Faith is the name of the book. It's very interesting to see there the importance he gives to this book and how it can change and transform the community. So there's some homework for you. So we go through the day and we pick and we choose. And at the end of the day, we're supposed to bring ourselves to account. How much is on the influence of the evil whisperer and how much is the good stuff that we're oft returning to God and thinking about the meaning of these verses. You can see why the foundation of spiritual life, Shoghi Effendi says, has two pillars: obligatory prayer and fasting. You recall from the Egon itself that fasting is in the station of the sun in the heaven of revelation. Interesting, it's the highest thing. It has the profound, not to be easily discarded or left alone. And then obligatory prayer. And on top of that, the verses of God to be repeated morning and evening. Some of this seems to be solved through the question of remembrance. Very important theme. I wish Todd has a chance, he'll address this question of remembrance as it comes from in the case of the Bob, he actually identifies himself as the remembrance of God. And the manifestation is central to that. But also this working our way back from reading the verse of God, internalizing, beginning to assimilate the implications of the verse that we've read, invoking God's assistance to reveal to me the meaning of these verses. And in that process, returning to the Maker, remembering the Maker that they came from. So it provokes, the reading of the verse provokes assimilation. Assimilation provokes remembrance of the source of the remembrance of God. And then you come back to something so central. It says that the healer of all thine ills is the remembrance of God. There's one of the verses in Prayers and Meditations. He says, ignite, O my God, within my breast the fire of thy love. I lost the next phrase.
That it may consume the thought of everything beside thee. That it may consume the thought of everything beside me. I think is it.
Yes. Inspire, O my God, within my breast the fire of thy love, that its flame may burn up all ills except my remembrance of thee. That every trace of corrupt desire may be entirely mortified within me, and that naught may remain except the glorification of thy transcendent and all glorious beauty. Right, the whole order of things is in those few verses. Implicit in that is that God should create the fire. And I find more and more moving through this process, trying to understand it in some way, that everything depends on our asking Him to do it. He tells us to do it. Gleanings, and He tells us what to do. But in the prayers and meditations, He has us invoke Him to enable us to do it, or provide me with the fragrance, or something. So it comes back to the interplay. He provides the meanings to us. He provides these shades of all kinds of influence as we meditate and think about the writings. Now, how do we apply this kind of thinking to these eternal verities that we're talking about? How bewildering to me, insignificant as I am, Baha'u'llah in his communion with God affirms, is the attempt to fathom the sacred depths of thy knowledge. How futile are my efforts to visualize the magnitude of the power inherent in thine handiwork, the revelation of thy creative power. When I contemplate, O my God, the relationship that bindeth me to thee, he in yet another prayer revealed in his own handwriting testifies, I am moved to proclaim to all created things, verily I am God. And when I consider mine own self, lo, I find it coarser than clay. One of the one of the things that our enemies accuse us of is having a prophet who says he's God. He's a human being. How can he be God? You know, worst of all possible sins. Call yourself God. How do we defend ourselves in that? That accusation comes at Baha'u'llah himself. In the center of the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf, you'll find the arguments that he brings up to defeat that. And also the explanation inherent in the Egon, where he describes the various characterizations, modes, aspects of the manifestation of God, whether he's God himself, or the messenger of God, or the apostle of God, or the, what is it, I don't know, the guardian, or the servant, the humble servant of God. In all these voices, you find the verses explained. And Baha'u'llah says there that at times the manifestation is in such a state of selflessness that he becomes the embodiment of God in the first person. Then he's able to say, I am God. But God forbid you think that the individual reality of Baha'u'llah is God. It's a clear reflection. The Holy Spirit is shining forth from him. Abdu'l-Baha talks about this power of thought itself. We think thought belongs to me. You know, I'm a person. I'm a thinker, and I have my own ideas and inventions and all. Abdu'l-Baha says in one of the talks, it's the Middle of Paris talks, he says, even the power of thought is a bounty flowing from the Holy Spirit. Without the Holy Spirit, you couldn't stand on your feet, you couldn't exist. So when he says, I am within the mighty, powerful, and self-subsistent, this is a reality. But we're far from it because of this materialistic, secular interpretation of existence, which tells us no, and strengthens the ego to be the major veil that says, I'm an accomplished human being. Baha'u'llah says most of the knowledge of the people, they borrow stealthily from each other and take pride in. And he calls that satanic knowledge. So what other knowledge is there? We learn from each other, okay? Revelation acts in a level of consciousness that is this bounty of the Holy Spirit. So the whole thing is matching. If we can become aware enough of how it locks together, then we'll realize we will have assimilated one of the meanings, or one of the blessings, if you will, of the verses of God. Seems to me that thinking about these things, remembering that, particularly there's a verse in the section about the true seeker where he says, to consume every wayward thought with the flame of his loving mention. Loving mention is, again, Zekrullah, again, is remembrance. We're human beings. As a result, we have to tame the animal forces within us. That's a very onerous task. I'm sure we would all testify to that. It's like getting a horse, breaking a horse. Once the horse is broken, once the horse understands who its master is, it becomes a very useful creature. You can ascend mountains very easily with it. The same thing, the body is here to use in our learnings and our accomplishments, but it has to be under control of the Spirit. The door of the knowledge of the Ancient of Days, being thus closed in the face of all beings, he, the source of infinite grace, hath caused those luminous gems of holiness to appear out of the realm of the Spirit in the noble form of the human temple, and be made manifest unto all men, that they may impart unto the world the mysteries of the unchangeable being, and tell of the subtleties of his imperishable essence. All the prophets of God, his well-favored, his holy and chosen messengers, are without exception the bearers of his names and the embodiments of his attributes. Trusting that Todd's going to find a way to get back to that subject, even in a minimum manner, to not lose track of how important it is, how we must trace the signs of God in creation, in the universe, in the horizons, however you want to translate that Quranic verse.
And the souls.
And then in your own being, in your own soul, your own reality. Starting with something as simple as, did you digest your own breakfast this morning? How did your breakfast get digested? Did you have any knowledge or concern? Were you directing the whole operation? Who's doing that? What intelligence, what sovereignty reigns in your soul that controls all of these facilities in your body just to keep it going, corrects and heals you? Abdul Baha says to tablet to a physician, in 8 tablet to a physician, not that particular one that's called that through the power of the Holy Spirit, they can heal people of illnesses. Always strikes me as very interesting. The near-death experiences that you see recounted on the internet, for example, so many of the people had terrible illnesses. I mean, cancers that have eaten out the middle of their beings, and they go to the next world and they get sent back, and there's no trace of their illness anymore. How does that happen? Again, this is all the power is there, all the sovereignty is there. Which also means we have to trust that anything that happens to us has a divine meaning, has a special meaning. The other day, one of the friends called and she said, I was the daughter of a man whose mother, that would be the paternal grandmother of this lady, he was not popular with the mother, and so we children got no attention or love or appreciation from that grandmother. She was always stern with us. And she died, cancer, I think, or something. Anyway, she said it's now 15 years or so that she died. And she said, every day I say a prayer for her, for the progress of her soul. And she said, last week, I asked myself, I'm doing this, well, what can be the outcome of this, I mean, how do I know that it has any influence, whatever? And that made her sad. 3 days later, she had a dream. Her grandmother comes to her, radiant, loving, filling her with the tender compassion and holds her, takes a hold and holds her and holds. Doesn't say a word to her. It's so hard for us to know that these prayers and things that we do have this far-reaching effect. The lady writes to Abdul Baha and she said, my husband is ill. Please pray for him. And Abdul Baha assures her that he prayed for her. Then he died. And she says, what was the point of And he writes back an explanation and he says, if all the souls that friends would obviously want to stay here, we would have too many people on earth and nobody in heaven. This is the nature of things, that people need to, but the souls need to pass on. I don't know, we don't have an account of how the woman responded to that, but she didn't want to lose her husband. Just get yourself ready to go, dear. That's because we're all going that way. More of these central truths here. These tabernacles of holiness, these primal mirrors which reflect the light of unfading glory, are but expressions of Him who is the invisible of the invisibles. You've got these sons of truth, or the Son of Truth, which is the emblem of all of the manifestations of God in their unique participatory role as universal manifestations of God. Reflecting that, the light of the Holy Spirit shining on all of us, okay? We are told that in the verses of God, you encounter that light very directly. You can see there's a need for your knowledge of the verses so that the voices that are insinuating things from the verses have some source. Not that God can't bypass that, but the normal way is that you know the revelation and are trying to follow the teachings. I saw a quote from Abdul Baha last week. He's talking about the tablets, the verses, the importance of the verses. And he says, any single letter, and this Todd stressed this also, any single letter of the divine words is a full reflection of the splendor of the Son of Truth. Which suggests, and in the course of the day we've heard some of these readings, that not necessarily the repetition 100 times of the greatest, not the greatest name, the Tablet of Ahmad or something that sometimes people propose to us. And I think when we propose the numerous repetition of prayers, we should give the person a gracious opportunity to decline or accept to take part. I always find it a bit heavy when we wish you to come, we're going to say 19 tablets of Ahmad. And then I feel bad, but that why do I feel bad? Why shouldn't I be happy with 19 tablets of Ahmad? But I'm still annoyed. Unfortunately, the same thing happens when I'm told I have to sing along. That, you know, you're like out of unity if you don't sing along. If you don't. Are you singing? Give the people a break. I mean, I love to hear the songs, that's fine. Sorry, I had to stick that in.
Thank you. You're off the hook, Mr. Dunbar.
We won't ask you tonight.
Or ever again.
We won't even invite you to anything. Yeah.
That goes for future as well.
That Baha'u'llah should, notwithstanding the overwhelming intensity of his revelation, be regarded as essentially one of these manifestations of God, never to be identified with that invisible reality the essence of divinity itself, is one of the major beliefs of our faith. What happened? There we go. Which should never be obscured, and the integrity of which no one of its followers should allow to be compromised. Nor does the Baha'i revelation, claiming as it does to be the culmination of a prophetic cycle and the fulfillment of the promise of all ages, attempt under any circumstances to invalidate those first and everlasting principles that animate and underlie the religions that have preceded it. I also feel like we have hardly come to an understanding of the principle of the oneness of religion. We say they've all come from God. He's saying they're one religion. Todd was demonstrating that truth too. They're going to become one religion. The Baha'is are going to be the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims of the future. And that we're going to see it as one revelation, which of course keeps repeating that, and we keep repeating it, but we still, in our minds somehow, because they're separate communities, we don't see how that's all going to coalesce into one terrific reflection from pole to pole of the splendors of the Abha beauty and the promises that are in these verities in this same text. We have to find a means for you to, you don't need this booklet that I have the way it's broken down, but you're welcome to it. But you must remember, go find the dispensation. You can find it in the Baha'i Library. You can find it in the World Center, the text at the World Center. And revisit these truths one at a time to see what are these essential verities, these essential truths which distinguish the faith also from the religions of the past. The principles of the faith, also Abdu'l-Baha says the principles, Baha'i principles, are unique, they're fresh. This is not a repetition of the past. So we're a little more about this question of relationship to past faiths. The God-given authority vested in each one of them, it admits and establishes as its firmest and ultimate basis. I remember the translators of the Surah Haykal were saying that the extraordinary wonder of Baha'u'llah in the original Haykal, he says he brings the verses and allusions and usages of the verbs and images from those holy books of the past. He weaves them into the Haykal in a way that you don't see right away, but maybe the Jew that reads it sees things from the Torah there or feels the resonance of these things. So the divine words of Baha'u'llah are collecting all of the devotion and love that the followers of these past religions have if they awaken to the realities of the faith. It regards them, these other religions, in no other light except as different stages in the eternal history and constant evolution of one religion, divine and indivisible, of which it itself forms but an integral part. It neither seeks to obscure their divine origin nor to dwarf the admitted magnitude of their colossal achievements. We're not in competition with the past faiths. We're fulfilling the very promises essential in their scriptures. It can countenance no attempt that seeks to distort their features or to stultify the truths which they instill. Its teachings do not deviate a hair's breadth from the verities they enshrine, nor does the weight of its message detract one jot or one tittle from the influence they exert or the loyalty they inspire. Far from aiming at the overthrow of the spiritual foundation of the world's religious systems, its unalterable purpose is to widen their basis, to restate their fundamentals, to reconcile their aims, to reinvigorate their life, to demonstrate their oneness, to restore the pristine purity of their teachings, to coordinate their functions, and to assist in the realization of their highest aspirations, which have now really been lost with distortion and takeover by different very erroneous points of view. I mean, the jihad mentality of Islam, which is so unacceptable. These divinely revealed religions, as a close observer has graphically observed, as graphically expressed it, are doomed not to die, but to be reborn. Does not the child succumb in the youth, and the youth in the man? Yet neither child nor youth perishes. As a close observer. In Baha'i scholarship, you're trying to find out what's going on all the time. Where did this come from? It took the modern day development of computers to help to solve this problem. The Guardian had clipped it from the Guardian, the newspaper, The Guardian. Was in 34 when he wrote this, so it was at that time. There was a review of one of Ibsen's plays in the newspaper, which had these phrases in it. One of the Baha'i scholars here in America found that for me. I was trying to identify the sources of things in Shoghi Effendi's writings, where they came from. And I know Mr. Fateh Azam was working on that as well. It gives you some idea of the scope of Shoghi Effendi's keeping abreast of the affairs of the world, and at the same time doing these terrific jobs that he took, like composing these two bedrock books, The Gleanings and Prayers and Meditations, like providing us with the source and origins of our faith in the Dawnbreakers. I don't think, friends, we're going to see any volume 2 of the Dawnbreakers. You know, all those events that were so dramatic took place at that time. It becomes quite straightforward imprisonment of Baha'u'llah and life in the Holy Land.
Do you know why that is, that it won't be made available?
Do you want to answer that, Stephen? What? No, it has things in it that are not appropriate. The family was still, the sons were still there, and Nabil quotes the sons and praises them and does things. It just doesn't have the weight of the other. He's familiar with the whole thing.
The period from the mid-1860s until the ascension of Baha'u'llah is covered just in a few pages in the original text of the Dawnbreakers. Originally, Nabil was commissioned by Baha'u'llah to write the history of the cause up until the most great separation of of Baha'u'llah from Mirza Yahya in Adrianople in 1866. So the sort of the detailed history kind of ends in 1866, and then there's another sort of coda almost to Nabil's narrative, which kind of summarizes what happened after that. And most of that has been incorporated into Passes By.
Yeah, important parts of it that are significant are retained that way. Mr. Baliuzi also had access to the original manuscript, and he quoted a few things from there that you wouldn't find anywhere else. Tablets, Baha'u'llah has written several tablets guiding Nabil how to revise the book. And he says, first of all, you need to remove exaggerations. Second of all the cursing against the enemies of the faith, which is every bad phrase. So you can see that in the course of this, and notice that Shoghi Effendi also, as the translator of the Dawnbreakers, the first word it says as editor and translator of the Dawnbreakers. So we didn't have the clean manuscript. This dear Covenantberger stole the revised version of the Dawnbreakers. And we had the manuscripts with the crossouts that Nabil or somebody else has made. We didn't know, that was not altogether clear either. And Shoghi Effendi took this whole thing in hand and edited what needed to be in the book. It's a precious service that he did, really extraordinary.
I heard that he also Baha'u'llah removed the miracles from the book. The miracles that were attributed to Baha'u'llah. Evidently Baha'u'llah removed them in the course of the narrative.
Well, if we don't have the narrative of much of the part of Baha'u'llah as it is, I don't know how. I've never heard a confirmation of removing the miracles. I suppose that could come within the category of exaggerations. maybe, yeah.
There are some miracle stories in the original text of the Dawnbreakers that did not make it to Shoghi Effendi's version.
That word exaggeration is also one that's leveled against people who consider a human being to be God. It's a technical term in Islamic theology. Gulu or Bulat. So this could be referring to I don't know, I haven't seen it, but he could be referring to people who called him God, and he wanted that taken out of it.
Mm-hmm. These divinely revealed religions, as a close observer has graphically expressed it, are doomed not to die, but to be reborn. Does not the child succumb? We've read that already. Sorry about that.
But it was good.
Succumb to the youth and the youth in the man, yet neither child nor youth perishes. We ourselves have recalled earlier, I was talking about this change at puberty, such an immense change, because suddenly you have an independent soul that's broken away from the restraint of the guidance of his parents, which was of course appropriate, but then the child starts to realize it has an independent mind of its own. It can decide what's truth. And as people have said, the time that an individual knows more than they ever will in their whole life is when you're 16. It's very interesting, you know. We get to 19 and 20 and they begin to doubt that they know everything. It's unfortunate that whatever the main constraint on the youth is generally, is the one that they rebel against. And if they're Baha'i, children of Baha'is, they rebel against the faith. Not always, but that's part of what happens, you know. I can remember Persian women weeping to me saying, you know, that my daughter is 15 and she says, "Where is God? I don't see any God." She's an auxiliary board in Utah now. Just, I remember a wonderful man that was serving in the World Center whose son was in my youth class, and he was rather rebellious too and refuting everything possible. And he said, "Just remember that it's not over till it's over." So if you're having trouble with your children, you don't know how it's all going to end in the end. You don't even know how you're going to end. There's a few frightening phrases in the writings that suggest you could suddenly fall from grace and deny things. That young man also has a lovely Baha'i family in Hawaii, and they're all solid Baha'is, and his son is an auxiliary board member, so the world goes on. Well, friends, there's this explanation about the character of the manifestation is there, and very carefully thought out by the guardian. All the dimensions of it are there. Very useful to appropriate to oneself for being able to talk about the faith. Informed conversation, elevated conversation, whatever you want to call it.
Does this pertain to Persian hidden word 77? You know? Well,
I couldn't guarantee that. There's a letter from the guardian that says that hidden word refers to the nature of the manifestation. It's not generally addressed to believers. Isn't that 77?
Can
Do you
recite
remember?
it?
that's that one that talks about the cardinal principle.
If I not read it out,
Yeah.
77, if we don't mind.
Yeah, look for that.
Here it is. O Son of Justice, in the night season, the beauty of the immortal being hath repaired from the emerald height of fidelity unto the Sadrato Muntaha, and wept with such a weeping that the concourse on high and the dwellers of the realm above wailed at his lamenting. Whereupon there was asked, "Why the wailing and weeping?" He made reply, "As bidden, I waited expectant upon the hill of faithfulness, yet inhaled not from them that dwell on earth the fragrance of fidelity. Then summoned to return, I beheld, and lo, certain doves of holiness were sore tried within the claws of the dogs of earth. Thereupon the maid of heaven hastened forth unveiled and resplendent from her mystic mansion, and asked of their names, and all were told but one. And when the urged, the first letter thereof was uttered, whereupon the dwellers of the celestial chambers rushed forth out of their habitation of glory, and whilst the second letter was pronounced, they fell down, one and all, upon the dust. At that moment, a voice was heard from the inmost shrine, thus far and no farther.
Yeah.
It's just so mystical, so. And
Shoghi Effendi says 3 letters,
yeah.
and we forgot 2 of them. We don't have the 3rd one yet, but whatever that means.
Well, before that, he says, he writes about this one, and he says, the truth of this cardinal principle might not the following passage of the hidden words be construed as an allegorical allusion to the progressiveness of divine revelation and an admission by its author that the message with which he has been entrusted is not the final and ultimate expression of the will and guidance of the Almighty. And then he quotes that hidden word.
Oh, wow.
And the cardinal principle, which he says in World Order Baha'u'llah, is that religious truth is not absolute but relative. The divine revelation is orderly, continuous, and progressive, and not spasmodic or final. I can't pull all these things together. They just don't. I mean, for me, I'm not, getting it. But
Mr. Dunbar?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I heard a great explanation of this by Mr. Naqshbandi at the World Center. You want to hear it?
Sure.
sure.
So he said, in Persian, Baha'u'llah is B-H-A, right? And what this implies, very much as you just said, the first letter B introduced the faith to the universe, so to speak. On the second letter H, all the angels in heaven, all the holy souls came out, and they were dumbfounded. Basically, they fell down, they couldn't even handle it. And he, Baha'u'llah, within himself, was told to stop. Don't even reveal the third letter, the third aspect, the inner, deeper reality of the faith. So according to Mr. Naqshbandi, he believed it meant that the full reality of this faith isn't even known, which makes, to me, complete sense. And that's what he believed was the full meaning of that hidden word.
Yeah, I don't know about the role of Baha'u'llah in that, but there is this letter which Shoghi Effendi says the third letter is yet to be revealed.
Yeah, and right, and that the A, the B-H-A, right? And the third letter is not fully revealed. His
Yeah,
revelation. Yeah. So
More to come. Let's say, as he says, this is progressive revelation, which the whole idea is there's going to be more. He's trying to confirm that because the finality is so such a prevalent part of past religions that we need to get over that.
At least.
Cannot claim to be regarded, the faith cannot be claimed to be regarded as final revelation of God's will and purpose for mankind. By the way, startling enough, who knows how we're going to go in the future, but the Master refers to the Baha'i dispensation lasting no less than 1,000 years. No less, possibly could be more. There are tablets that I know of that say it might be 1,000, it might be 2,000 years, it might be 5,000 years, it might be 10,000 years. And in a talk in Egypt, he says it might be 15,000 years before another manifestation comes. Does that mean we're going to take a long time to get it together, or? But then it is appropriate that this is the most great revelation that's ever appeared in this world. It's got to have time to unfold its splendors and
Maybe it's up to us.
consolidate itself in the future of mankind. Do we think the golden age is going to mean that we'll all have enough food in our icebox and have new cars and everything will be so happy? While we're at that, what does this thing from the hidden words mean with regard to the celestial, loving, relaxed, calm nature of the next world, where everybody falls on their faces in the dust at different events in this world? I mean, I think you're going to find it's a full-blown existence there as well.
A full drama.
Yeah.
We'll find out what.
The cities, what are the cities of the names of God? What are the, I don't know, there's so many hints at the activities of the next world. There's three old pioneers, Persian pioneers in the South Pacific that were there for decades, and I met one of them a few years ago in New Zealand, and he said that the three of them had made a pact that they would try to come back and tell the other two about the next world. So he said, well, the first one died and it went a couple months, nothing happened. And then the first one communicated to the second one, said, I'm so sorry, you know, the promises we made, but I'm not allowed to reveal the character of this world. But one thing I can tell you, it's very busy. So much for the hammock and the tropical eternity, you know. So this comes then to this, that if you say there's a finality to our revelation, it must necessarily conflict with the fundamental principle which constitutes the bedrock of Baha'i belief. Now, when you're asked what's the bedrock of Baha'i belief, I think there's very few of us that will say that the principle that religious truth is not absolute but relative. It doesn't occur to us. We say divine revelation is orderly, continuous, and progressive. But that principle is up above the other one.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not spasmodic or final. That's another thing. Its character, it builds on itself. What does the principle of religious truth being relative and not absolute mean to us? People, I've heard Baha'is say, how is that possible? The truth is truth. What is going on?
Well, what's true in one century is not true in another
That
century.
there you got the key.
But isn't there references into the writings, absolute truth, sort of with a capital T? I mean, I don't know, I'm just sort of remembering some of that.
I don't know, but the other principle that it's what is suitable for the time. The emphasis is suitable for the time. We're at the time of the great culmination of social and spiritual evolution on this planet. This is in the final stage, which is the unification of mankind. If Baha'u'llah had given the rules for relationships with a civilization on a neighboring planet, that wouldn't have been relative. It isn't that there aren't true things to be said, but it's what is the truth of the time we live in and what's important for us to focus on. Did you want to say, Todd?
Just, it seems to me that, again, in the way that matter develops from spirit and the principles of life develop from spirit, not the other way around, it is the case in sort of the Baha'i theory of knowledge and how truth is configured. It is this, that Baha'u'llah is telling us that what brings people together and allows them to live in peace, that is the truth. That is what truth, that's the proof of truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is what fosters peace and harmony and conviviality and fairness. That is the truth, whatever it may otherwise sound like. That this is, and that may not be the truth in every setting, but today, in our global situation, that's how we will know the truth when we see it. I feel this when I read the writings.
No, it certainly holds true in the realm of understanding. Why, I don't know why we would have to wait so long for the next dispensation. To the pilgrims, again, Shoghi Effendi said the next stage will be our contact with the neighboring planet. And that will require divine teachings to establish the relationship, how that should remain. And then that grows, I suppose, through the whole solar system till we get to the end of our...
Isn't there a passage somewhere from the Guardian that says that the Baha'i era is destined to last 5,000 centuries?
That's the Baha'i cycle.
Baha'i cycle.
And that's the one that Mr. Olenga said at the end of that, the Prophet will come to unite the solar system. So that presumably before that, we've had a lot of relationships with other planets, whether they all are inhabited according to the promise of Baha'u'llah, but you know, there's a lot of inhabited planets that have gone dead because their sun dies. There's different periods for this to take place, I think. So we don't know exactly. You know, mainly the science is telling us that they don't see any signs of life out there that, as we would understand it here.
We would understand.
The fact that, besides the fact that Elon Musk thinks he's going to make an artificial sun on Mars to warm it up.
I think Steve's gonna find it though.
Good. Friends, that's it for this afternoon. Thank you so much for your patience.